I want to thank you all for being early listeners to the podcast. And I feel like I'm entering a new chapter now that I've gone through all of the old episodes that I have recorded, and all the episodes are going to be fresh from here on out. I want to let you guys know a little bit about my plans for the podcast and what's coming in the future. I feel like I'm still practicing right now, and I'm just still getting used to my equipment even and getting used to doing this. But at a certain point, I'd like to get some more well-known names and guests on different other psychonauts and well-known speakers and people who are pioneering in their field. And I feel like I'm just kind of getting this thing going and establishing, getting some episodes under my belt and also improving my skill. And then at a certain point, I'm going to reach out to more well-known people and conduct some cool interviews. But for now, I'm having fun interviewing my friends and just hearing people's cool stories. At some point, I'd like to start live streaming as well. And I'm looking at the platform Twitch to be my host for that. Twitch is a live streaming platform mostly around video games. That's how it started, but it's now expanding into including all other kinds of mediums. And I think Twitch is going to be the next best thing, next big thing. So I want to get on there, and especially while I travel around Asia and walk around Tokyo and Taipei, I'd love to be live streaming that. So you guys can just tune in with me and you can chat to me and I'll see it and answer you live, and we can walk around foreign cities together. So that sounds fun. And so this episode is about Burning Man. And the Burning Man Festival just was last week and concluded last Sunday or Monday. And so I had in a good friend of mine, my friend Benjamin, who I've known for 16 years, and his cousin Simon from England, to talk about their experiences at Burning Man, and also just about the transformational festival scene. Many of these other festivals have sprouted off of Burning Man or Burning Man culture. And so that's been a big part of my life and part of my growth, and a lot of my friends I've met at Burning Man or through other festivals. And it's definitely a hub and a meeting point for spiritual seekers or people who are interested in plant medicine or alternative lifestyle. It's kind of a big freak party. So I've had a lot of fun going to those festivals and experienced a lot of growth there too. So with that, here is Benjamin and Simon. The Burning Man Festival was last week, and so this seems like a good time to do an episode about Burning Man and the transformational festival scene here on the west coast of the United States. And thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today. I'm here with Benjamin and Simon.
Hello.
AKA Grasshopper.
Yeah,
AKA Grasshopper.
got new names and being out here.
Yeah. I'd love to hear the origin of that, but first let's lay out what is Burning Man. I'm sure a lot of people know about Burning Man. People may have been or may not have been. I think Burning Man and the sort of psychedelic or consciousness expansion community often go hand in hand. But for those who don't know, Burning Man is a weekly festival that's held in the desert, the Black Rock Desert in the state of Nevada. And
1 week.
1 week.
Per year.
1 week per year, right.
For some.
Yeah. And the Black Rock Desert is desolate. There's nothing that grows there. There's no life there. There's barely even any insects at all. and it's very dry and inhospitable. And every year, about 50,000, or is it more now?
I think it's closer to 70 at this point.
Yeah, it keeps growing and growing. So around 70,000 people come from all over the world and build a city, a makeshift city in this desert. And the city itself, you can look up satellite images of it. It's geometric. It's sort of circular, with one sort of pie slice missing, which within the pie slice of the circle, there's tons of art projects, like huge ones that people build. And most of the Burning Man experience, all of the art and all of the various experiences that people create for others to enjoy, almost all of it is generated by the participants. So there are people who've been going to Burning Man for years, and they'll work year long or keep building on their projects from previous years with all their personal expense put into it, all their time into it. And it's not for profit. It's just for bringing this experience out to Burning Man, or the playa, as the land out there is called. And it's really a one-of-a-kind festival in the world. And there's a whole culture there of openness and exploration. And it really encourages people, I think, to go for it and just to let loose. And it's a safe place to explore oneself. And there's so many funky, cool people out there just like being radically free and doing their thing. And it's helpful for like stepping out of one's own box and one's own bubble and just getting into the spirit of things. So you gentlemen were just there last week, and Simon, it was your first time, right?
My first burn, yeah.
Your first burn. And how many for you, Ben?
I think this was my fifth.
Your fifth.
And it's been about a 5-year gap since
Right.
the last time I was there.
Yeah. And so Simon is your cousin from the United Kingdom.
That's right.
And he's been visiting for 6 weeks now.
Just
Roundabout, yeah.
And is this your first time to the United States?
Yeah, it's my first time traveling outside of Europe. And so my first time here. I've not seen Benjamin since I was a little baby, and here we are.
Yeah.
Just going to Burning Man.
5 or 6-year-old little boy looking up at me. Benjamin, can we go play?
So did you come out here? I mean, obviously you probably wanted to come out for Burning Man. Like, was that the focal point of your trip, or you were planning to come out anyway and it was like, oh, Burning Man's happening, I should go?
Yeah, it was more like I came out here just to reconnect with the family and see everyone, and then we kind of just accidentally ended up going to Burning Man. It kind of, everything just fell into place. But no, seeing Benjamin and my aunt and things like that was the main focal point. And then it kind of just evolved into Burning Man, and we went to Beloved as well.
Up in Oregon.
Yeah, and that was beautiful. And we actually booked to go to Beloved because we weren't intending on going to Burning Man. It was kind of like instead of. And it was just a roller coaster that ended up in us going. It's just crazy, really.
And so I'm not sure if you are familiar with the culture of these music festivals, but it's hard to describe really what they are, because you almost have to be there and experience. Like, I could say it's a music festival. Yeah, there's music that happens there. Or it's an arts festival. There's art there. But to me, really, it's the culture, and it's the type of people that are there. Just really kind of like open-hearted people, or just emotionally open, very accepting kind of culture and exploratory a lot of people there are into personal growth and working on themselves and have been working on themselves a long time. There's a lot of really interesting and strong people who they know themselves and they've done that work.
Yeah.
And it's just pretty incredible to go into a festival and party with a bunch of people like that, just like really cool, like top tier people, that, you know, they have the courage to step off of the well-trodden path and quit their 9-to-5 jobs, and just it's hard to try and make your own way doing your art or your passion, and yeah, it takes a lot of strength, and there's a learning curve there, and but that process builds character. Yeah, it's cool to go to these festivals and get to know some new people, and then maybe see them again at a later year and meet some more people, and there's this community built around these festivals.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's a whole subculture
yeah,
at the margins of the mainstream society that
Right.
is participating in the greater economic culture.
right.
And so,
We live amongst them, but they know not of us.
but it's becoming more and more prevalent and popular, the culture, because it breeds this artistic and also like a healthy kind of popularization of lifestyle. Like it's
For
cool.
sure.
It's cool to do yoga. It's cool to do meditation.
Totally.
It's cool to see the visionary artists, and I think people, when they get a glimpse of it, they get reminded of another possibility that's outside of the mainstream way to live your life. And so yeah, these festivals, a lot of people, you know, refer to them as transformational festivals, because you have this arc of transformation over a period of 3 to 4 to 5 days. And it's a remembrance, or an attempt to remember, I think, village and tribe. It's like this neo-tribal renaissance. You got all these custom-made clothing that designers go to Bali, or they go to India, or they go to Thailand, and which is amazing because it connects this economic circuit between people here in the U.S. who have these ways that they want to be entrepreneurs, and then also get to travel the world and make connections with family tailors. A friend of mine owns a company called Gayatri, and I've worked for them for many festivals, and they're really great clothing, really for men and women, festival clothes, yoga clothes, just really comfortable fitting things. But they've made their life out of just going to these festivals, and then on the off times they go out to Bali, and they've developed these really beautiful relationships with family people of that island and the country, and have a really good sense of morality, you know, in their business, because so often business can go towards the cheapest route that kind of takes advantage of people.
Right.
So I think there is this inquiry as to how can we live our lives amazingly with joy and also responsibility. And that's not everybody, but there's a marker that's pointing towards like this retribalization of being connected to each other and to the experiences of all kinds of shared experience and kind of collective experience.
Yeah, and there really is a global community. I mean, and there are festivals that happen all over the world. But Bali has the Bali Spirit Fest festival, and yeah, there's ones that happen all over. And I feel like there's a certain personality type. The seeker or the alternative lifestyle person, and many of which I feel like those kind of people are generally in the vast minority of like a greater populace, but they seem to gravitate towards these festivals or these scenes, and there is this kind of community of people from all over the world. It's especially apparent in Bali, where yeah, like, I mean, you'll just go to a party and there's like these cool, like, I mean, I've never found a word for us. Like, we're not hippies, but that's probably like the most similar word for, at least from the mainstream perspective. But there's no real label. It's just, I don't know.
High-tech, new age, hippie, tribal.
Yeah, something. But it's definitely something that's happening that doesn't quite have an accurate label.
Yeah. But full circle back to Burning Man, I feel like Burning Man is the ultimate festival that really has this trickle-down effect to these other festivals.
Definitely.
And really draws people, like you said, from all over the world. It is this insane experience of almost absolute freedom of expression. And yeah, just to be out there on this vast desert from nothing to this 70,000 person city, and as you're driving down the highways, you can spot out car after car just filled with you know they're on their way
camp
to
gear,
yeah,
and
bikes,
you just
bikes on
bikes,
the racks,
yeah,
and
totally.
all
You're
kind
like,
of art cars like on the highway.
and then you just drive by and you look at them and wave at them, and they're like, yeah, like,
yeah, everyone's stoked. Everyone's just on this pilgrimage. It really does feel like a pilgrimage. Yeah, festival culture has been a big part of my growth, my life in my 20s. And it's definitely formulated many relationships, friendships, and growth.
Yeah, and I mean, my first festival was Burning Man in 2008, and I'd never even really knew about the scene, and I didn't even know that much about Burning Man, other than it sounded really cool. I like to be surprised, even if there's a really good movie, people are like, oh, like, this movie's good. I don't even want to know what it's about. I want to just walk in blind and just experience it. And that's kind of how I did Burning Man. I didn't know what to expect. And that was your first year as well, you know, 2008. And that was your first festival too, right?
No, I started out going to the Sierra Nevada World Music Festival. A friend of mine in the college dorms that we went to college together, her name is Jen Smith. Her father is the main producer for that festival. So I started volunteering, and it's like a big reggae world music festival. And that's I went to that 6 years in a row, volunteering. And from there it just expanded to Earth Dance was a really big one.
Right.
That was pretty impactful because they focused on a universal or synchronized prayer for peace, and they would invite
and they had Earth Dance festivals all over the world simultaneously.
Exactly.
And they would link up.
They did an amazing job of organizing synchronized festivals that had this moment in time where no matter where they were at what time, it was synchronized to do this prayer for the earth. And it was led by indigenous grandmothers of the 13 Grandmother Council, or other indigenous native peoples were a part of that. And it was for me, it made it so much more meaningful. It made it feel like, yes, this is part of our purpose. It's not just about like partying and having fun. And there's teachings that were being offered, and there was this sense of being connected to a greater path of transformation for the planet and for culture and for people to wake up. And we're still obviously on this journey of how can we bring healing to ourselves, to our culture, to our society, and to the world.
And a lot of these festivals too, I feel like, really offer the invitation for all the participants to go deeper, you know, and to share in maybe, like a shared prayer or shared intention or activity, but really also it's just the opportunity to go a little deeper and just to not get caught up in the, you know, the momentum of just going about aimlessly or partying. And I mean, partying is definitely part of these festivals. People celebrate and have a good time or imbibe or whatever. But I feel like what sets Burning Man and other transformational festivals apart from like more traditional festivals like Coachella or just like music festivals, like there's that aspect of intention where you know, it's like, okay, well, we're all gathering here definitely to have a good time, but what else, what other opportunities can we have from this?
Right. You have so many opportunities to learn from people who have developed a vast array of techniques, of spiritual practices, of inquiring within meditation, interpersonal skills, and really asking really deep questions. And so, yeah, people are out there to party, and then there's this whole culture of people who are creating these spaces to easily walk into and not even intend to walk into a space, but then all of a sudden they're listening to someone speak about something really deep and important, and they stop to listen, and they could just be there for the party, but all of a sudden they find themselves hearing something that's actually impactful and could trigger a whole shift in their life. And that's the big difference between just a music festival where you're there for enjoyment and imbibement, which is beautiful, to almost like this living university. It's kind of this culture of learning and growing and unpacking and unfolding these, you know, these parts of ourself that want to be exposed, want to be healed, want to understand. Sharing information, just a lot of sharing of information.
Yeah. And it gives you the opportunity to have an experience that will change you. Like you can leave a different person, or with different things to think about. Or
love to hear from Simon, like
totally,
an example of that.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about Burning Man, is that although it's a one major event of the year, is that you're encouraged from what you've learned to take that into the real world, and that in that way, it's a year-round kind of festival in what you carry in yourself. So I went to these amazing workshops and heard all these amazing people talk about their lives and different stories, and they were just like, this is you can transfer this into your life and carry it with you. I went to this one workshop about perspective and about how I'm really racking my brain now, about how all the choices that we've made have led us to be where we are at the moment. So, and he was like, everything that you've ever decided has led you to sit in this workshop. And I was like, wow, I've never thought of that before. And that's something that I can take with me and reflect on anytime. So I could be on the bus or the train or just walking around, and I can carry that bit of Burning Man with me. So you've got that party side of Burning Man, but you've also got that really spiritual side as well that you can really absorb and share with others, which without even knowing I've just done now. So yeah, and that's one thing that I found. I've been to a lot of festivals in my time. I say that as if I'm like really, really old and experienced, but I've been going to festivals for a long, long time, and that's one distinct aspect of this festival that I've really found, about how you're encouraged to, you're not in like this bubble of a festival. You can be who you are anywhere you are. It doesn't have to be in that certain space, which I thought was so transformative and it's a really nice aspect of it as well.
Mm-hmm. And I like that Burning Man is a full week rather than just a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I like to go on the first day. Like not everyone goes for the entire week. Some people show up later in the week, or even just the weekend warriors, as we call them. But I like to go in the beginning of the week because the energy builds. And I mean, there's a lot of people that come on the first day, but it definitely gets busier and busier and busier throughout the week. And I like to have those first few days to just settle in and, yeah, just like settle into the land and the climate and the heat and the dust, but also just settle into myself. And I find that there's layers of depth to drop into, and I like to have those first few days, which tend to be quieter. It starts on Monday, so like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they build over those days, but they're quieter. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, that definitely the peak. And then
this year Wednesday night was the big night for a lot of people.
Really?
Yeah.
I imagine I haven't been since 2013, and I imagine that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to hear how it's changed. What you thought?
Well, I got there Tuesday morning, so we left on Monday. No queue either. We could just go straight in, which was just such a relief.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to wait like 8 hours or so.
Yeah, like we were going through, and the people I was traveling with, they were like, "Yeah, the queue usually starts here." And then we just went down this road, and it went on and on and on. And yeah, we were really fortunate we could just drive through. So we timed that perfectly. But you definitely have that moment, that adjustment period until, a couple of days, midweek, where you're like, I'm in the desert, and it kind of just hits, and you're like in this amazing space. It does take a while to adjust. But once you've adjusted, you're there, and it's all good. But yeah, definitely you need that time and space to just reflect on where you are, and how this is different to anything that we're used to, because you're just taken straight out of your normal comfort zone, which is just everyday life, and thrown into a desert in the middle of nowhere.
So I want to hear more some of the juicy details, like, like what are some of the experiences that you had out there that just were really striking to you, or unusual, or transformational?
It would definitely be the people that I've met. Being from like a city background, and London, London town, and just being able to just talk to so many people, and just how easy it is. You can just chat to anyone about anything. You can, and it's so refreshing just to be able to do that, and no one's really on their phone or like distracting themselves. They're just there to be spoken to, and you can just have amazing conversations with hundreds of people, like countless. It's kind of a struggle to remember everyone's names. And what's really nice is that, and sometimes it's quite transformative, is that those people are all over the world, but a lot of them are actually from England. I met a lot of people from back home that I'm still in touch with, and cool. That was just so strange. Cause
were they traveling here just for that, or do they live in the United States? Are they people that you can connect with when you go back to England?
Yeah, they're people that came just for Burning Man, and that I just so happened to meet because me and Benjamin were in separate camps but together. So people had travelled to set up these camps and do talks and things like that. And I just got in touch with them, and they're back home already, just waiting to chat with and talk about Burning Man all over again. So you get to relive it again. That keeps popping up, just reliving Burning Man.
Does England have its own subculture of this type?
It might do. I'm not really connected into those circles so much. Yeah. But yeah, definitely there'll be
There's
Yeah.
definitely like a well-known underground, especially like electronic music scene
Oh
in
yeah,
England,
it's
like
definitely out there.
drum and bass.
Yeah.
I mean, so many of the electronic music trends start in England and Germany, and yeah, come out from there. There's a lot of creativity on that level. But yeah, I'm curious about the culture too. And Benjamin, you've traveled there several times, right? And did you drop into that scene there?
I did. Yeah, I had a great time. I've been going to England since a little boy, and it wasn't until I was 21 or 22, 23 that I decided to kind of make my own circle of friends and get to explore what England had to offer in terms of festival culture. And I went to Thailand, and I met some really amazing people in Koh Phangan at this well-known expat kind of place called the Sanctuary.
I've been there.
Right. It's a really great place to meet world travelers, and met some great people there. And when I went to London to visit family, I reached out, and I was just adopted into this really sweet crew of people who were living in, a lot of them were living in this warehouse, and it was just an artist collective with performers and artists and actors. And a really good friend of mine named Danny Evans, she was a producer of a project called One Taste, not to be confused with the orgasmic meditation. One Taste. This is a platform for poetry and music and up and coming like artists to just have like this kind of open mic space, but they do it in like a really good organized way and bring that to festivals. And I went to like 3 or 4 festivals in a summer. One was called Buddha Fields that I really enjoyed. It was a smaller festival, about 3,000 to 5,000 people, and there was an emphasis on no alcohol, which is pretty rare for England, because the English, they work hard and they party hard. And that was troubling for me to see how much just shit-faced people were getting, like really, really drunk and really high on things like nitrous and like other kinds of drugs that were party drugs. And that was a bit offsetting for me. A bit sad to see just piles of these like nitrous cartridges on the floor, and the trash left behind was just more than I was used to. But I did go to a festival like Buddha Fields in England, down in Devon, and it had that transformational feeling where there's people really connecting, and there's like this amazing ecstatic dance that was led by this woman named Jules, and it was probably actually one of the most powerful ecstatic dance or guided dance experiences, where she was doing this gender alchemy, where she had all the men come into the circle on the outside and all the women come onto the inside, and the men witnessing women being together dancing, and the women knowing that they're being witnessed by men. And then after that, switched it to the men to be in the center and the women holding space on the outside. And it was really powerful and beautiful, and you get in touch with those aspects of like men being together, like like kind of this primal energy, and then you know that these gorgeous women are just like watching you. And so after doing both of those, she invited men and women to come together, and after doing those 2 separations of the genders and then coming together, there was just this beautiful, more explorative, more open to seeing each other in this way of like, like you're amazing, or you know. So that I experienced that in England, and there was a big healing camp with lots of healers and massage therapists, and I kind of participated in some of that, sharing some body work. So yeah, there's definitely festival culture in England. I don't know it super well, but it is there. and I'm sure it's just growing and thriving more and more.
Yeah, I've been to a fair few festivals back home, countless, and I've also been to some in Europe as well. I've actually just come back from one in Spain, and yeah, we've got a huge mixture of festivals back home, but I've not experienced one like Burning Man back home, not yet. I've not found it. I'm pretty sure
the quality or the scale.
The scale. We also we're kind of lacking the desert kind of front as well.
Yeah.
It's a bit too green.
I mean, what's so amazing about Burning Man, it's not just like a festival. It is literally a city.
Yeah.
With functions of a city. You have a DMV, Department of Mutant Vehicles, where there's hundreds of art cars, dragons and jaguars and jellyfish and
pirate ships and giant
spouting
rubber
out
duckies
flames from the mouth, and just
they all
these
shoot
massive
fire.
sound systems. And like in the beginning of the festival, you just see this line of like 100 art cars waiting in line to register their cars. You have
there's basically, there's the Rangers, which are sort of not a police force, but they're
security,
yeah,
definitely,
and but they're not authoritarian. They're just like looking out, they're just
they can be if you're
of course
you're doing something that not kosher,
but they're not there to like bust you.
Right.
They're there to keep the peace. They're there to like keep things in line and in order and keep the vibes good.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it is to secure the border to make sure people aren't like sneaking in.
Right.
Because that's like a Jedi mission for some people who try to do that. Then you have actual law enforcement present too, and that's I think a big difference over the years of Burning Man.
Yeah. Because
Burning Man started, I think, over 25, 30 years ago with this guy Larry Harvey, who just passed away this year. Right. So this is a big significant year for Burning Man because the founder of this festival has passed away. And so there's kind of a rite of passage or a next generation to come around. I'm curious how Burning Man, sometimes things really fall apart when those founders pass away, So it will be interesting to see how Burning Man continues its legacy without the founder alive.
Yeah.
And also there's a woman at the temple. So for people who aren't familiar with Burning Man, the city is formed as a giant clock. And there's a main part of the city where the people have their theme camps and they live in these camps in this 2 to 10 o'clock part of the city. And then in the center of that clock is the man. And then that's at like a 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock time. At the 12 o'clock, you have the temple. And Saturday night is the big, burn of the man. It's this unending fireworks show. It's like the best fireworks show you've ever seen in your entire life. And the man,
I mean, people are probably familiar with the Burning Man, with that symbol, but every year they build a structure that there's always the man in some form, but they'll build him in some giant structure, and it's like very artistic and beautiful. And there's a unique design every year. And then when they burn the man, they set that structure on fire.
Yeah, they burn it to the ground.
Yeah,
and everyone comes and watches, like 50,000, 70,000 people all around it watching this thing burn down.
Yeah, it's the climax of the festival.
And this year was it was iRobot, wasn't it?
That was the theme.
When the man was burning, all of the art installations around it, they're all made of metal, and they just didn't go away. They were just standing there as it was going up. It was just
it was like this Terminator kind of thing where like the flames are engulfed, but you still have this standing steel robot that's just not burning.
Crazy.
And there's a whole ring of these different robot sculptures around the man. So it was really
sounds like semi-apocalyptic.
Oh,
really striking.
Yeah.
image
Definitely.
And you can feel the heat as well. We were
from far away.
Yeah, there were like these big like clouds of just fire.
Yeah.
And we were like in the middle, weren't we? We weren't.
We're
Like,
right at the 6 o'clock
yeah.
mark. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
we could
Center, yeah.
still feel the heat from the fire.
Mhm.
It's like nothing else I've ever seen.
Mhm.
Biggest bonfire ever. Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
Mhm. Yeah, so let's talk about the temple too, because that's definitely a big part of Burning Man.
Yeah.
Most people know about the man, but the temple is another structure that is also, it's there every year. It has a particular spot, like on the sort of layout of the city, like you
Right.
said.
Mhm.
And it's really like, it is like a temple. It's different every year. And people design it, like I imagine architects, like, you know, there's professional design elements in it. I mean, they're really well done and well constructed, beautiful pieces of art. But the temple is more of the spiritual center of Burning Man. And people, it's a place for reflection, and over the years it has come to be a place where people mourn those that they've lost over the year. And you go in the temple and there's often like shrines that people have brought and built within the temple complex to somebody that they've lost, or there's photographs and there's like Sharpies all over for people to write messages on the walls. And it's an experience just to walk through there and just see the heartfelt outpourings and offerings to people that were really loved that are now gone. And there's often people like just having their moment in there and mourning or crying. And it can be somber in the temple at times, or there's a palpable energy there that's very deep and can feel intense. But it's not always like that. It can be like that. Like many times throughout the week, I'll just go into the temple and just see what's going on in there. And it's always powerful in there, but sometimes it's like, yeah, there's people playing music, and it's more, I would say, more of an intentional space. Like people are mindful that they're in a place that has meaning, and they're generally respectful of that.
And it's a sanctuary too, because the city is just so just going off all the time, 24/7, just massive party sound systems. And the
you
temple
can go there
has
for
this
quiet.
Yeah, it has this sanctuary feeling where you can rest, you can sit, you can contemplate, you can just be without being subjected to that massive party that's always happening.
So what did the temple look like this year?
It was like this kind of funnel. It was very simple. It had like a spiral kind of funnel coming to the center. So we missed the burning of it, the first part of it. We got to the ladder. It was actually the latest I've ever arrived to the temple burn. But I saw a video of it, and the way that it's formed, it just creates this incredible central column of flames just shooting right through the center out to the top.
And that's one of the cool things too about how these structures are designed. They're not only designed to be beautiful and functional throughout the week, but they're also designed to burn. They're designed to be burned and to burn in a certain way. And many times, like it'll burn in layers. So you have this sort of like outer decorative wood that will just like burn hot and fast and then fall off. And then you have like a sort of the medium structure, and then you have the core structure, and these layers can burn and fall away. Sometimes the structure is designed to collapse in a certain way. Like I've seen temples, they're designed to, when they finally give way, they just like spiral in, like imagine like a perimeter kind of structure of the thing, and it just twists and like falls in on itself. Just really beautiful. the amount of thought and energy people have put into not just the structure, but actually the way that it goes down.
Totally. Months, years of planning.
Mm-hmm.
This, I heard that the creator of this temple was a new designer. So it did open later than it was meant to.
Uh-huh.
And it was definitely more simple than previous temples.
Some previous temples are quite
complex and
complex and huge, tall.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
One thing about when the temple was burning is that I heard that because of the way it was designed, it's actually a lot like your crystal lamps here.
Mm-hmm.
It was designed to like swirl, and it encouraged like this mini like dust storm next to it to spin parallel. So as the temple was burning, you had this like dust storm just
like dust
up.
tornadoes, like
yeah,
of smoke and dust. And
yeah,
mm-hmm.
it was just something else,
mm-hmm.
and we just didn't expect it, and it was just beautiful to have that, because it's like a perfect like synchronicity of how nature was involved in it as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people see those as spirits being released from the temple.
Mm-hmm. There's so much meaning that's poured into that structure throughout the week.
I mean, people wait all years to release their cords, their attachments to the loved ones, and their pictures are there, their stories are there, and so that's a way for people to let go and to say, okay, like I've made my amends and I release you. And there's a lot of wayward spirits out there that stick around and can't actually go into the light until people still alive like do that work to let them go. So that actually on a spiritual plane is happening at that temple on that burn. And you see it, like you can feel the spirits being released through these spirals of smoke and wind. And I've in the past years that I've gone, there's one particular year that it was just unbelievable, just seeing like these spirits coming off of the temple as it was burning, and you knew that everyone could see that. It was an amazing, this unspoken kind of recognition of like that paranormal observation. Yeah.
And the experience too of watching the temple burn it's
silent.
Made even more powerful because of how silent. There's tens of thousands of people there gathered to watch the structure burn, and nobody is making a peep. And it's just, that in itself is just a surreal experience to be there with all of these people watching this thing happen. And I mean, almost everyone who's watching it has spent some time at the temple there over the week, I imagine. And it means something to most of those people. And so everyone's just having their moment, and there's a shared moment there. And I remember the first time I watched it, I was really struck by that. I was like, I've never had this experience of really like a shared focal point with this many people.
In such a sentimental way too. It's very bonding, and a lot of people leave, and I think it's really sad. Yeah. A lot of people leave right after the Saturday. Like,
they don't wait
temple
for the
burn,
temple burn.
I'm not going to stick around for that. And that's, there's
to me,
a big
that's
difference
the
in the
part.
people, right? There's a big difference of Burning Man attendees who leave, before the temple burns. And some people have to go because they've got important things going on in their life. But for the most part, if you're going to go to Burning Man, stay for the temple burn. It's a way to really encapsulate and to bring closure in a really beautiful way to that experience.
And that's perhaps a good segue just to talk about the different types of people that come to Burning Man, because I think from the outside, Burning Man has a reputation of just being a big party in the desert, and like Burning Man is like a bunch of people in the desert doing drugs, and that's all that it is. That's it has that reputation. And I remember when I first started going, people were like, oh, you go to Burning Man, that's just like a big party in the desert with drugs. And I would try to explain to people like that does happen there, but that's not all that it is.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a contingent of Burning Man participants that are there for that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not there for spiritual reasons. Like, they are there to party, and they party hard. And a lot of, like, I used to stay up
for
all
them,
night.
that is their spirituality, is to just like let loose completely, and that's how their spirit walk works. It's maybe not the most sustainable or healthy one, or even
I think you give them too much credit. I think
I just want to like not separate that like spiritual between just life, because no matter whether we choose it or not, this life is a spiritual experience, because we are spirit. And some people are abusing substances to kind of get away from their life that is just mundane or too hard. And so that's how they cope, and that's their spiritual progress. And that can lead them to a point to awaken to, oh, actually this is debilitating me. And now I'm like having to do like some serious work.
I see what you're saying.
Or it's like, these like really intense peak experiences that have like a really profound effect on people. And so that's just what I wanted to bring out, was like they're whether
they're consciously choosing that or thinking of it that way or conceiving of it that way, that's just that's the path, or that's the choices that they're making.
But there is a huge difference between people who are just there to like rage, and they don't have the intention or the consciousness around something more than that, something more than the party.
Yeah. There's a moment every morning, like the changing of the guard, where some people are waking up with the sunrise, and waking up fresh, and like having breakfast and starting to stretch. And then there's the people who've been out all night that look like the Walking Dead, that like they've been up all night doing MDMA and partying and raging, and they're just look thrashed, and they're walking. There's that overlap like when some people get up and right before other people go to sleep, where they're like walking amongst each other. And there's definitely like a night scene and a day scene, and you can try and do as much of it as you can, but obviously we have our limits and we have to sleep at some point.
I will say though, I didn't really see too many people who weren't in their like could contain themselves. There's only a few people that I was like, oh man, they're like really drunk, or they're really fucked up and just not able to hold themselves. So that was actually great. That was good to see. I saw just so many people having fun. And really playing with themes of just wildness and silliness, just being silly, and bringing that, and also a lot of just bringing the taboo of sexuality into this forefront of playfulness. And just how, like, if you look through the booklet, everything that's offered has this kind of sexual innuendo and in this very hilarious kind of wording, and it's just funny. Yeah.
Like what?
Oh man, I wish I had the book. I do have the book in the car. I can't even.
Sure, but just that playful spirit of
just like
there is a very like liberated sense of sexuality at Burning Man.
And that I think that's a big focus of it actually.
Yeah.
Is to bring the taboo of sexuality into like, no, this is like humanity,
healthy and natural, and like we're sexual beings, and it does feel good to be in a culture and an environment. It's super refreshing to be in an environment where that's sexually liberated. When, like, I feel like our culture, American culture, or even just Western European culture, is very sexually repressive, and that's not something I necessarily realized growing up, or it wasn't readily apparent. Like, I think of our societies as generally pretty free, but certain attitudes I feel like are really, like, there's an undercurrent of repression.
Yeah, it's very twisted. It's like we're hyper sexualized for our, marketing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, sex sells. But
it's thrown
in
at us
actuality,
constantly.
if you like are sexually liberated, you are shamed.
Right.
And you're a slut or you're a player or whatever. So it's like,
And it's such kind of, it's a thing that people, like, it is so public, and so sex is everywhere, and sexual imagery is everywhere, and pornography is massively consumed. But the sexuality is like, I don't know, it's more of kind of like a private thing, and the way that people talk about it, and there is like an undercurrent of shame around like people's personal expression or experience of sexuality. And it feels really good to be in an environment where that just gets peeled away, and it's just like sex is fun, and exploration of our sexuality and our interests or fantasies. And Burning Man is interesting. It's there because there is like a hypersexualization present at Burning Man too. Almost semi-reactionary to it feels good. There's this aspect of sexuality there that's like breaking out of the repression, and making it okay to kind of talk about and explore, right? But there also is like a deeper kind of more balanced sexuality present as well. Like this full spectrum,
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of people in theme camps focused on the importance of consent and how to be approach this in a healthy, appropriate way. Because without that, there's a lot of dysfunction in our society around exploring sexuality. So we had amazing like leaflets and flyers around just really laying out different elements of consensual contact between humans, men and women, or women and whoever, what the gender is, but in sexual connection. Is it sober? Is it does it have excitement? Is there a mutual agreement to it? If none of those are present, then it's not consensual. And I think the sober thing is really important actually in festival culture, because a lot of people do take substances, and in those states they become more open and then can have an experience that maybe when they're not on those substances, they look back on it and they're like, oh, I actually wouldn't have done that. And I think that's a really tricky place to acknowledge. A lot of people don't want to like acknowledge that aspect of how people consciously or even unconsciously use substances to, inhibit or not be inhibited. So consent is a huge part that I saw at my Burning Man experience, where there's lots of lectures and talks and workshops and just awareness around consent around.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've heard people claim that if you're not sober, you're not capable of giving full consent. And curious what you think. I don't necessarily agree with that. Like, I get the perspective.
Yeah.
But I think that's, I mean, it's kind of a blanket statement to just say like, oh, if you are not sober, you're incapable of giving your consent because you're altered.
It's a gray area for sure.
I mean, I do get the perspective and what they're going for, and I also think like, it's my choice to take a substance or not, and it's my responsibility. Like, if I'm altered, I mean, let's say I go to a bar and I get really drunk and I get in a fight. Am I held responsible for my actions? Yes, because, nobody made me drink. I made the choice to get that intoxicated. And in that altered state, I maybe was more aggressive and got in a fight, or I did something. But we're held responsible for that, for our actions, even in an altered state. And I think there is that aspect. There's an aspect of personal responsibility there, of knowing your limits, be it with alcohol or other substances. And I think it gets tricky with drugs because many people are not as familiar with how is this drug going to affect me? How is it going to affect my decision making?
Yeah.
And especially in a festival or party environment, sometimes people, just go a little bit stronger than maybe they get into territory that they didn't mean to, or didn't know that they were signing up for by taking this thing, or by taking this quantity of this thing.
Yeah. I would just say it's much better to build a relationship with someone first and know that person and really develop that connection prior to taking any substance, where you can build that sense of connection and trust, and knowing that there's something that's not being altered. That is definitely the best and the appropriate way to have a sexual connection with somebody. Because there are people that will manipulate people and offer things knowing that it will kind of open doors that people necessarily wouldn't open if not,
Would you say, what substances would you say, like, is that more of like an MDMA thing, kind of like opens people emotionally?
Yeah, there's lots of them. There's MDMA, there's GHB, which is also known as like a date rape drug. And is used, I think, more in very dose specific. And I've never taken it, but I know people that do. And
it's euphoric at lower doses, and at higher doses, it makes you pass out hard. Where you can,
you'll be completely.
You can
out.
shake somebody vigorously, and they're out, and they won't remember anything.
Yeah. I've never.
But people take it recreationally.
I've never been around that situation, but that's what it does.
I have not somebody who was like drugged, but somebody who was taking it recreationally for the euphoric effects, but they did a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And it is very dose sensitive, like the amount from where you're having a good time to where you fall. And when you fall asleep on it, I mean, you're not in danger, like you just, unless you're around dangerous people, but like internally, it's not like you need to go to the hospital. If you just sleep and then you wake up and you're fine, as long as like you're around safe people. Yeah. But I've been around somebody who they took a little bit too much and they started getting drowsy and they fell asleep and they were out cold, like could not stir them at all. Not even like just shaking them. Somebody's really, really asleep. They'll be like not even any of that. Just like a dead body, passed out. It was kind of scary.
Yeah, it's scary.
But
no bueno.
Yeah. So, I want to ask you about your experience of returning to the playa after 5 years. And I want to give a little background too of like my experience with Burning Man. So my first year was in 2008, and I went 6 out of the next 7 years. So I went 3 years in a row, and I took a year off because I was in Thailand. and I didn't want to come back for
Mm-hmm.
Burning Man. I was like, I'm out here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came back for another 3 years. But I stopped going because, well, even at my first year, 2008, I mean, Burning Man had been going on for nearly 20 years already.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very underground. Like, most people hadn't heard of it at that point. But even then, on my first year, people were saying Burning Man isn't what it used to be. Like, Burning Man is like fallen off from the good days. And
Totally.
I was like, well, I don't know. I wasn't there for that time, but this
Yeah.
is pretty good right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm enjoying myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I noticed in my experience year to year that as Burning Man got more popular and more well known, and in particular, this notion that Burning Man was just a big party in the desert where people do drugs,
Mm-hmm.
it had that, like, that was definitely what people thought of it as. And it started to draw in people who wanted that experience. And people were like, oh, like, I heard there's this big party in the desert where people do drugs. Let's go do that. And it started to draw in a larger contingent of those people who weren't necessarily there for, because there's this whole sort of code. There's like, what are they called? They called the 10 Commandments, or the 10 principles.
10 principles.
Yeah, and like,
do you know what they are?
leave no trace is one
radical
of them.
self-expression,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
radical self-reliance.
Mm-hmm.
I've not had to remember them for a week.
But basically, there are these guidelines about how to care for yourself and how to care for others. And there's no money out there. Like, you can't buy anything. It's a gifting economy.
Well, you can, but it's
Well,
Center
coffee
camp.
and ice,
yeah.
basically.
Center camp is where the only place that you can use money.
But there isn't like financial transaction that happens there, essentially.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's this whole thing that Burning Man is, besides the party in the desert, that I felt like there was this growing contingent of the populace that were showing up that they weren't really interested in that. Like, they were there to party and get fucked up. And yeah, there were just more and more of those like zombie Walking Dead types. And at night it would get crazy. Like, there were just so many people drugged up and fucked up, and there was more alcohol and less psychedelics. There was more nitrous and ketamine and just sort of like different more narcotic type drugs. And the pocket of like the really, really good stuff, I felt like, was shrinking. And I noticed that the larger community, there was kind of like a pulling back from Burning Man, and there were these big camps that people would work on all year for free and actually at expense to them in time and resources. And they'd all bring these incredible camps together with like professional sound systems and set up these amazing lineups of top electronic music performers that you would pay to see, that they're playing for free. And you know, it's just at this camp, they're hosting it, and you just go to this party, and like Polish ambassadors playing, followed by Kali Scintilla, followed by whoever. And there's just these amazing music lineups. And these camps, just, I noticed that the culture of Burning Man started to shift and become more indulgent, and those like intentional camps and intentional pockets, they just started to withdraw for a time. And I always had a sense that there's this phase that we're in where Burning Man's really popular. All these newcomers are going to come in and just, they're going to have their Burning Man experience where they go out to the desert and do drugs, and it's going to blow over, and then maybe like we'll all come back at some point. And so the last year I went was 2014, I think, or 2013. But I noticed that this year, like within the last month, a lot of people on Facebook were like, I'm going to Burning Man this year. I'm trying to find my ticket. And more this year than any of the kind of like last previous years, there was this big turn back towards Burning Man, at least in the friends that I know from the festival community and things like that. And I imagine it has something to do with the founder passing away, but I don't know, like, so I'm curious how, like, in your perception, how have things changed? Do you agree with my perception of how Burning Man was starting to turn towards the dark side? I felt like,
no, not necessarily. I think that it's all there.
Sure.
And there's from what I know, Burning Man has grown into this huge party, where there's a lot more now people who are just there to receive the creativity of others. And the whole premise of Burning Man is that you go there not to receive but to participate and to be an acting like member of that
to contribute
artist collective.
It's
and
not
so
a participation sport was like one of the things. It's
right.
like you're like, or sorry, it's not a it's not a spectator sport,
right? And
you're here to participate.
Yeah,
come to participate.
And so this year I was invited, and one of the main reasons I went was because I was invited to be on kitchen staff for a theme camp called Ideate, and they had a whole speaker series with people who work for Google, people who are working for Apple and tech companies, and also really thinking about bigger picture themes of the problems of the world right now and how to solve them and how to use technology for sustainability and for ecological kinds of things. So there was a panel speaking about future cities, and what better example than Burning Man as a city to look at as like this clockwork of creativity. So that's what brought me back to the play was an opportunity not to pay $1,200 for a ticket. And
is that how much is it?
So yeah, the first tickets that came out, because there's a lottery system, but the first tickets that came out were actual guaranteed tickets for $1,200. You paid that, you were guaranteed a ticket. And then there was a lottery after that. The face value, I think, were like $425.
Okay.
Some people say that $1,200 also helps like create the ceiling for scalpers, like, and so like when you're trying to find a ticket, you know, anything beyond $1,200, you know, is just that helps keep the cap onto it. But I know that there have been these theme camps that bring a lot of consciousness as well. Specifically to me is Red Lightning and Sacred Spaces and the Nectar Village that had like heebie-jeebies,
right,
and the Shaman Dome, and like they're still going. Well, the heebie-jeebies and Nectar Village, and this year there was a camp called or village called Anahasana, and they were holding that kind of sacred spaces kind of vibe, where you could feel the healing and the intention that was there. And there it was like a compound of domes, geodesic domes that had this central kind of dance floor space. And they were having all kinds of workshops about
there was one on perspective, wasn't there? How people they showed you how people perceive you and how you can mold that, and how you see a reflection of yourself through other people. We kind of gutting, really. We missed that one, didn't we? Because it was so full. It was really popular. People loved it there. It was always buzzing, and the domes were always full.
And it seemed to be this street Electro, which was E Street. There's this whole area of around like 4 o'clock to like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock E that had all these really high vibe kind of camps and
nice
things that were happening. And we were at 545 and J, which is like pretty much in the suburbs. You're looking at the entrance line into the playa. But we were camped next to Heart Tribe. It was this beautiful collaboration of friends who just decided to have a really yummy space of cuddling and really good food and like just being together in a healthy, supportive way. But yeah, so for me, it's been about a 5-year absence going to the playa, and I never really knew when I would return. And because of this opportunity and lots of close friends going, and then also my cousin coming to the States and really wanting to show him a good time and kind of expand his experience, it was like, all right, Burning Man, we got to make that happen.
I've definitely had the everyone's been saying the Californian experience, even though
The
it's
Black
in
Rock
Nevada.
City
Yeah.
experience now.
Yeah.
You've had an experience in California that a lot of Californians haven't had. That-
Yeah. I've heard that a lot. Some of Benja's friends have come up to me saying, I've been here for years and you've been here like a couple of weeks and you've already done more than me. You're going to Beloved and Burning Man. And yeah, I've really just been thrown into it, into the flow. And it's been great. I don't want to swim out of it. There's just been so many adventures. And it's all led up to Burning Man, and I've not realised that yet. It's just kind of everything fell into place to reach that pinnacle that is Black Rock City. And yeah, it's just been, I can't even describe it. Just the things that we've done and seen, and the nature here, and the different environments of like, going from a desert to the forests in Oregon to the beaches of Oregon to where we are now. It's just been incredible. So yeah, just going to Burning Man has been a journey in itself. Getting there.
It's initiation.
So yeah, definitely full throttle experience because of this guy right here.
What are some, like, and you're going home in like 2 days, right?
Yeah, day after tomorrow.
So like, give us some kind of reflections on your time here, like both things that you are taking back with you, but also I'm curious to hear your perspective on the United States, just being here for the first time, spending 6 weeks, an extended amount of time. Just what's your, how does America stand up to maybe your expectations or just your perceptions or preconceived notions? Like just give me.
Well, for one, everything's much bigger. There's so much land and room, and even the motorways are huge. So yeah, that was definitely the first thing that I noticed, was just the scale of everything. Because like London's got the narrow little Victorian streets, and but one thing that I've learned is just from the people that I've been around, everyone's been so nice, and I've really learned how to like be grounded and just engage with people, and just really just go with the flow. That's quite a good question, really. It's there's just so much that I can't really put it into a container. It's just I've learned so much about myself, and other people. This experience has been so educational. One thing that I can take home is just to be me, and that's one thing that I can definitely take back, and just how to just embrace and explore, really, and just take life head on, and just see where it goes.
Do you feel like there's a distinct cultural difference between here on the west coast of the the United States and England. Like, I've never been to England, but I've heard that it's just more restrictive there, just in terms of like self-expression, there's kind of more of like a cultural pressure to fall in line with a certain, like, it's more trying to think of the word, conformist. I don't know, I haven't been there, but that's what I've heard, or that's what other Brits have said, that like Americans are we just have this like natural confidence to express ourselves and to just be ourselves.
Well, I've seen a very like unique bubble of California and the people that I've been hanging out with that freedom of expression. Back home, in the circles that I hang out with, that's definitely there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's places in London where that definitely resonates. There's definitely a strong correlation there. There's perhaps maybe an underlying of that, but I think maybe I'd like to think that's starting to fade a little bit. But the like my circles and people that I hang out with, there's definitely a correlation with the people that I've been hanging out with here,
Mm-hmm.
which has been really nice. Actually, there's been a nice overlap. But I think you might just get that anywhere, that kind of uniform kind of element. I think that's a very urban aspect of living. Like out here in the nature, I think it's a lot easier to be, a lot more free. And so I think in that sense, maybe. But I'm very fortunate that I've had that bridge across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Which has been really nice.
Did you meet any ladies while you were here?
I'm not sure. No, I don't think I have. Not yet.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Kept talking about his playa wife. When am I gonna find my playa wife?
Playa wife.
Mm-hmm.
Gonna have to come back next year.
Mm-hmm.
So many beautiful women.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Beautiful people.
Burning Man is known for that in particular. And it's really hot, so people don't wear many clothes too.
Mm-hmm.
But they're very expressive, and they're
flaunt their beauty and their sex appeal, and have fun with it too, and like own it in a really great way.
Did you have a playa wife?
I definitely had a playa romance, and it was really unexpected and really sweet and meaningful, actually, in the quality of the connection. And it was just out with friends, and then I looked to my right, and there was this beautiful woman who I recognized from years ago, and just was like, hey, I met you 10 years ago. I actually stayed at your place with my friend, but you quickly left. I don't even think you remember. And she didn't really remember, but I knew her name. And we just
Did she stand out to you at that time? She must have. You remembered her 10 years later.
She was like, she's beautiful, really beautiful, special spirit. She's Filipino and Russian. She's definitely got Asian.
I'm Filipino and Russian.
Yeah.
It's just unusual combination that doesn't happen very much.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
Yeah, interesting. So yeah, we just kind of slipped back. We couldn't hear each other, so like, let's have a conversation and sit down. And quickly it was like, hey, there's something to climb on. You want to go over there? Like, yeah. Well, I have to check in with my friends because we've got this dolphin pod thing going on. So, so yeah, we had a really beautiful evening together. Also interesting to still be in this journey with my ex-partner, still sharing a lot of love and time together and navigating that, because we're still lovers at times. And so as long as we're sharing intimacy, the level of communication and checking in is necessary. So it was kind of sweet to open this new connection with her. And then as my friends were like, hey, we're all going there, let's meet up, and I wanted to invite this new person, it was important for me to just check in right there and be like, hey, about to go meet up our friends. It includes my ex-partner, who we still like really like care for each other, and it's like okay and known for these connections to happen. And she really appreciated it, and still had a really beautiful evening together. I kind of separated from the pod. They went off and I stayed back and spent time with her, and we went to this art car called the Front Porch, and they're really good at keeping things organic. There's so much electronic music out there, and they had like this gypsy jazz violinist, and I was just
on the car,
on
like
on this front
around.
porch. They kind of park it, and then they have this kind of front porch like
That's cool.
like jamming, and it was really fun. And later, as the night progressed, we were right next to this art installation that it's held up by a crane, and it's this circular disc, and it's all LED lights, and it's just creating these the most incredible geometry patterns, like shifting from one to the next. And they're playing classical music, and you just sit underneath it, gazing up to it, and it's just the most incredible light sound show you've ever seen. And so we were there, embracing each other just at that really gorgeous time of the dawn coming up, and drinking wine, and just met each other and feeling all sweet and romantic. And she's like, she would take these big drinks of wine and then come slowly down and just spout like this wine kiss into my mouth, filling my mouth with like the wine from her mouth. And it was so sexy and so beautiful. As the sun was rising, listening to this classical music, just being blown away by this tech like light show. It was really, really special. One of like the highlights of my my Burning Man experience. You know, it's always really, you want that, right? That's one of the big desires while you're at Burning Man. There's so much sexual energy, so many beautiful women, and men for women or men for men, whoever, you know, whatever you're into. But we have that burning desire to fulfill that connection, and to have that, and in like kind of a meaningful way, is just, it really makes the experience like more fulfilling, I think. A lot of people, I think, leave maybe not actually being able to connect, and it can be frustrating because it's just at your fingertips, but there's something stopping people from being able to like fulfill that desire to connect. And I think that's people's journey to go through. Some people really let loose and just have like lots of connections and lots of lovers and just like go all out, and you're like, whoa, dude, that, like, yeah, you're going for it. At our camp at Heart Tribe, we had a communal sex yurt. That was an open space for people to connect sexually in like this community kind of space. So wow. Yeah, it was really beautiful. I did share I went in there with a lover, my previous partner, still lover, and it was really, really fun, really nice to be able to like be in that space and be with other people in that space, and kind of
what was the vibe in there?
Just
like,
sexy.
Yeah,
and comfortable.
Right.
Yeah, red tapestries and foam mattresses, and you bring your own sheet, and then there's like there's like little, like, you know, there's condoms there, there's like lotion and oils there, and I didn't spend too much time in there. Some people spent a lot of time in there.
I've actually always wanted to experience an environment like that. Like, there's an orgy dome at Burning Man, which I've never been to. Didn't really feel just the vibe of the Orgy Dome wasn't quite what I was looking for.
I
but
was always curious to go there and never made my way
yeah,
to it.
I was curious, but not enough to actually go in there. But I've always wanted to. I actually had a dream once. Like, would you mind just shutting that door? It's creaking, and it's. But I'll say this as you get up. I had a dream. I was sleeping, and in this dream, I was in this log cabin that a friend's cabin in Bonnie Doon. And what are you doing?
There's another dingling thing out there.
Oh, that's fine. That's the wind chimes. So in this dream, I was in this friend's cabin, and it was like late. It was probably around midnight, and there was a fire going, and there was a person just like playing the acoustic guitar just like really softly to himself, and there was another person in another part of the room sleeping, and another person writing. It was just a very gentle, quiet space. And there was a couple that were like talking, and they started like kissing, and then they started to like, yeah, just started to make love, like eventually, like just slowly into making love. And all of these things were happening at once, and they were all equal. And the couple there, they were respectful of this sort of like vibe and the quiet in their sharing with each other. But like the guitarist he was like playing to himself, and then we were all aware of everything that was happening. And he started to he shifted the rhythm of his playing gently to he synced up with them. He was playing music to them for just a moment. And then he just went back into just his own thing playing. But I woke from that dream just thinking, and it just felt really natural at the time. And there wasn't this all the shift of attention towards this sexual activity that was happening, which I feel like could very easily happen in many situations. And people's maybe judgment of them doing that in a public space. It was very comfortable, and it was allowed, and it was appreciated, but no more attention necessarily. There wasn't this kind of leering sort of attention brought to it. And I awoke from that dream just thinking wow, I'd really love to be in a space that feels comfortable like that, or even a sexual space that is more of a sexual space where people are sharing, and it's fun and it's playful and it's sexy, but it isn't kind of indulgent or this more sort of like darker kind of escapist sexuality, which often sort of manifests
taboo secret kind of thing.
Yeah,
I think it's really, really beautiful, healthy thing to offer to a community, actually. Heart Tribe, 150 person camp right next to ID8. It was 120 people, so almost 300 people all knowing of this space. And it really opened up this place of okayness around sex and connection, and not to shame it, and that there's a safe space to not only have a lover, but to share space. That's a huge threshold to go from your own little privacy to a shared space. And it's a big breakthrough for a lot of people to we had a 24/7 sauna steam room, which was amazing on the playa, and a big breakthrough for people to just be naked in front of other people. Right. And then so there's these levels of comfort zone that you can just burst through, at Burning Man. And that's what it's there for, is to really show you your edges, and to see how far you can go and hopefully in a healthy way, in a way that kind of expands your sense of what you're capable of doing, and therefore creating new pathways of how you see yourself and how you interact with other people. And all of a sudden something that was really frightening is now something that's kind of exciting,
right,
and fun, and
Yeah.
like playful,
totally,
and de-shaming your body, de-shaming all these ways that the greater society and culture has told us we should be like ashamed of.
right,
And really that's what Burning Man is like, just be totally whatever you want to be. You don't have to succumb to that, to that like just normality anymore. Just express yourself and have fun.
I find too that the way that people like orient themselves or behave in those environments make it more comfortable, like the types of people there, like, because you're all naked together, but and like everyone looks, but it's not this, like, I don't know, like
there's
you
respect
there's respect, and you settle in, and people aren't like
groping or anything like that.
and they're not like sizing each other up or like judging, or there is like a body acceptance thing, like no matter what you look like, and there's not a lot of judgment, and but it's actually it's one thing to be naked with strangers, and there's this like there's like these shower camps, like the Dr. Bronner's shower camp is a famous one, and it's called, maybe it's different than the human car wash, but in any case, there's this giant chamber that you all go into, like 40 people or 50 people at once. Everyone's naked, and
sud you up.
There's people like up on top of this container with like fire hoses of Dr. Bronner's soap, and they'll be like 3, 2, 1. They turn on this hose and they just blast people with soap, and you're just like in this, you're just naked with 50 people washing off. And that's certainly an experience to be had. That's fun. But I mean, it's one thing to be naked with strangers, but then another thing to be naked with like maybe a friend that you've hung out with like a half dozen or a dozen times or more, or somebody that you've known for a while, never been naked with, man, woman, whatever. And then just all in the steam room, and you're just still hanging out like you always did, but you're naked. And it's not really it doesn't have to be a thing. It doesn't have to be, it's often not a big deal. It's just like,
it is until it's not.
Exactly.
There's that breakthrough. For me, I was 21 or something. I went to Harbin Hot Springs with my family, and they had no idea that it was like a nudist place. They're like, oh, we're just gonna go to these hot springs. It'll be a great family trip. I was with my mom, my stepdad, and my sister, and we arrived, and like everyone was naked, and except for my family. And I just sat there, and I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just gonna be free to do that. And that was, I think, that was a big shift for me to accept myself that way. And so hot springs, go to them, enjoy them. They really teach you to like really enjoy the water and how to be comfortable in your body with all kinds of bodies. And it's really I think a healthy thing to do.
My first time being naked in public was at Symbiosis in 2009, which is well known as being like one of the most epic festivals.
The Boy Scout camp with the lake.
I think it was in Yosemite, right? Wasn't it? Or near there?
Camp Navarro, I think.
No, that's up in Mendocino, Camp Navarro.
Oh, right, yeah.
But it was this one place in Yosemite, and
that,
there was only that 1 year because
it was epic.
There was like, I mean, we treated the land respectfully, but still there was just a lot of cars, a lot of people came in, and there was an environmental impact. So there was just this 1 year, but I mean, so many festivals are in the desert. Burning Man's always in the desert, but a lot of other ones are in dry areas. But this one was in the forest, and there were these sound stages in the middle of the forest, and the trees kind of made this like really nice acoustic sound container, and the lasers would just like glance off all of the leaves and tree branches. And there was also a lake and a lake stage with like bumping music,
Pool party.
pool party. But there was this like floating platform out on the lake that you had to swim at least like a minute to get to it. It wasn't that far, but it was out there. And there was just like 20 naked people on there. And I just had this feeling. I was like, I'm gonna go for it. Like be naked for my first time and take off my clothes and swim over there. So I did. And as I'm swimming up there, I noticed that there's somebody that I know, this woman that I had met at Burning Man, just like not like maybe the year before, really cute. And there was kind of like a mutual attraction. And I was just like, okay, there's somebody I know there. And yeah, swim up and get on, and she's naked, I'm naked, and we're talking. We look at each other, but then just keep talking. And there were these 3 other like really beautiful Canadian women from British Columbia, from BC. And I don't know, it was that opportunity to drop into like normalcy and just feel kind of like really exposed and vulnerable, and feel my nakedness and my feelings about it, and then just get past that and just be hanging out with people that I'm really attracted to, and be naked and they're naked, but also not like go into like a weird space about that. And also for them to be comfortable too. That was an interesting experience of just women being nude and vulnerable and unashamed, and not like, because I think one of the manifestations of sexual repression in our culture is that like there's this sort of like inaccessibility of women, where because there's such a sexual aggressiveness to our culture that women don't feel safe, and women kind of like close off their sexual energy generally, and they're kind of more contained or closed in public. And that is one of the really beautiful things about Burning Man and other places, is that women, like the actual culture and environment is safer, I feel, to be more expressive. And women feel safer to be sexy or to be topless. And there is more of a culture of respect, not completely and totally, like, but I would say much more than in typical culture. And it's nice it creates more of actually a flow of sexual energy, rather than these sort of like obstacles and this frustration. Yeah. Well, anything else that you guys want to share before we close?
I think we pretty much covered everything.
We did well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for coming on the show and sharing your experiences, and wish you the best, Simon, in your travels back home, and
thank you so much.
Reintegration back into, I'm sure, it just sounds like you've had a powerful experience here that, perhaps you'll reflect on for a while. Yeah,
definitely. A lot to take back. Difficult to describe. It's so profound. And just being here has been totally life-changing. Definitely for the better, and I'll come back different but the same.
Yeah. I like to remind myself and to remind others of the beauty of this country. And I think America is in a dark time politically right now, and there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of the dark side of our culture and society and politics and economy, all kinds of things being exposed, and it deserves attention. But I think it's also important to remember how beautiful this country is, and how beautiful the nature is and the people are. And there really is a powerful creative element here, and spirit of innovation, and there are tons of kind of breakthrough, cutting edge things happening here in all different arenas that sometimes it can be easy to overlook or to lose gratitude for the positive aspects when a lot of negative aspects come forth. And yeah, I love this country. It's really, it's a beautiful land, and I think we still have a lot to offer the world in spite of our shortcomings, and a lot to learn, of course, too. So, well, thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I'd love to get some more feedback from you guys about the podcast. Honestly, I haven't really done much promotion at all, so I don't even know how most people have found me. I've done a little bit on Instagram and just on my personal social media, but I haven't even started promoting this thing yet. But if you guys are followers of the podcast and you enjoy it, or if there's things about it that you don't like in particular, I would love to know. I'd love to know what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy, because I'm continually trying to improve this. And I ask my friends, and everyone has positive things to say. Everyone seems to really like it. I notice the little things about myself of just better ways I could ask questions or not say or as much, things like that. But yeah, if you guys have any suggestions, I'd love to hear about it. I'm totally open to that stuff. So you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Chronicles of a Psychonaut, and also check out my YouTube channel too. The link is in the description. Most of these episodes have a video component. The only reason that they wouldn't is if that person doesn't want to appear on camera, but that's pretty rare. So if you want to see us speak, then yeah, check out the YouTube channel. Thanks a lot.